Enjoy the journey. Subscribe to our videos and give us a huge thumbs up.
I'm going to show you guys around the river. We are going to be out here together next 2.5 hours, covering nearly 30 miles of river by the time it's all said and done. I mean, 2.5 miles covering 30 minutes. Sorry. By show of hands, how many of you have never done one of these boat tours before? All right, we got some newcomers. Well, for you newcomers, a couple of rules real quick. Rule number 1, please don't stand up on the boat during the tour. The reason for that is that we're going to go right underneath some really low bridges. Now, if you're going to pop up real quick, take a picture or something like that, sit back down, totally fine. Just be aware of what's coming up ahead of us, okay? Rule 2, don't be smoking or vaping on the boat. Alcoholic beverages are allowed and encouraged. And rule number 3, don't be chatting on cell phones. Don't be having loud conversations. Just be polite to your neighbors and we'll all have a good 30 minutes out here together. Now with that, one last thing before we get going, which is this. If for some reason one of you ends up in the water during the course of this tour, I got life jackets below deck. If you end up in the river, I'm going to throw you a life preserver, at which point what I need you to do is to calmly hold it up over your head and just walk to shore. There's not very much water. No real danger on the San Antonio Riverwalk. With that, you guys, we're going to kick off this tour right here at the second largest shopping mall in San Antonio. We call this place the Shops at the River Center. Inside here, we got 125 places of business spread out over 1 million square feet of commercial real estate. Within these walls, we have a Build-A-Bear, we got a Legoland, we have an aquarium, 3 movie theaters, including an IMAX. In fact, if you check out these exterior walls, they're made out of 85% glass, 15% credit cards. A couple things about our boats. I get a lot of questions about our boats, and at this point in my career, I like to answer all the most common questions I get using a preemptive, condensed, 60-second soundbite. So here we go. We have 43 boats in our fleet, driven by 38 drivers. Every boat you'll notice is whispered quiet. That's because we run 100% on electricity. Every boat is charged up every night at one of 2 marinas down here on the river. In fact, over the course of this tour, if you look at the right place at the right time, you may spot one of our massive charging stations as we go along. Every boat is propelled by one single small propeller, and the whole number is all-board motor right below my 2 feet. And if you look at our boats, they of course come in different colors, but if you take a closer look, you'll find the distinguishing feature of every boat. Those are the designs etched into the side panels. They all have a very deep meaning to them. This boat we're on right now is decorated by the bald eagle and stars. We call this our Military City USA boat. That is the nickname of San Antonio. That yellow boat on my left that is decorated by doves. We call it a peace and love boat. We here believe that the river sort of lends our city an air of peace and tranquility, so we've got a peace and love boat for that. Now, the boat that I always like to come across during a tour is our tricentennial boat. That is marked by the number 300. And we have a tricentennial boat, you guys, because back in 2018, San Antonio turned 300 years old, which makes our city the second oldest surviving city in America. San Antonio, Texas, number 2. Which of course begs the question, anybody know what number 1 is?
St. Augustine? St. Augustine?
Yeah, St. Augustine, Florida. Well done. Where are you from?
Kentucky?
Kentucky, close enough, yeah. Right behind me, guys, that statue back there that's been a real eye-catcher since it's been built. That's the newest addition to the Riverwalk. That statue is called the Stargazer right behind me. That is carved out of volcanic stone. There's only one little piece that's not volcanic stone. That's that pure white marble in her right hand, that star. Now, what they say she's doing is she's staring into that device
Those are cute.
to contemplate when the Dallas Cowboys are going to finally win a Super Bowl. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Okay, a couple things about San Antonio. Not the city, not the river, but the person. We are in fact named after an old Catholic monk named San Antonio. Lived in the 1100s. And if you translate that name into English, it comes out to Saint Anthony. Saint Anthony, you guys, is the patron saint of lost objects. The Catholics will tell you if you lose something near and dear to you, you are to pray to Saint Anthony to get it back. And here is the thing about lost objects and where we are right now. Believe it or not, the city comes in and they clean out the bottom of this river every 2 years. What do you think they find in terms of lost objects? To the tune of about 1,000 every time they come in and clean this river out. Cell phones, I heard it twice. Yeah, well done, cell phones. 4 nights ago, I asked that question, as I typically do, and a lady raised her hand, and she guessed 1,000 dead bodies. I said, ma'am, I don't know where you're from, but this is not that kind of city. Not 1,000 dead bodies. On my right-hand side, you guys, that's people peeking out over the tree line, directly to my right, way up there. That steeple belongs to St. Joseph's Catholic Church. That was built in 1868 by a community of Germans here in San Antonio. Not many people associate South Central Texas with much of a German history. Turns out that we have a very rich German heritage here. And if you don't believe it, put a map sometime to San Antonio, and I'm going to tell you what you'll find. We are surrounded on all sides, multiple layers deep, by old German towns. Places like Selma, Fredericksburg, Bernie, New Braunfels, just to name 4. In fact, inside New Braunfels is a massive water park called Schlitterbahn. You don't get any more German than that. I mention this for one reason, which is this. From back there at that shopping mall, all the way to that stone bridge, this is all an artificial extension. The natural park doesn't start until they make a left-hand turn at that bridge, which means this piece of river wasn't always here. What used to be here, and had been since before 1967, was an old German neighborhood. But to build this piece of river, they had to come in with bulldozers and flatten an entire German community and displace all 1,600 residents. The only thing left standing is an old German Catholic church called St. Joseph's, where the choir still sings in German to this very day. We're gonna hang a left here, guys. And this is gonna take us onto the natural part of the river. As I complete this upcoming left-hand turn, you guys keep your eyes forward, a little bit to the left. You're going to see just emerging into view right about now a plain, white, ordinary, rather unremarkable looking hotel. That hotel, you guys, is the Hilton Palacio del Rio, and that is no ordinary hotel. This hotel, back in 1968, found its way into the Guinness Book of World Records for being the fastest hotel of its size ever constructed on Earth. Here's how it was built. Every room of this hotel was constructed one at a time like little cookie cutters on an assembly line 8 miles away. Not only that, every room also fully furnished 8 miles away. And when I say fully furnished, I mean the carpets were rolled in, the beds were placed inside, the beds were made, pictures and artwork tightly fastened onto the walls, lamps were bolted onto desks, Gideon Bibles stashed away in nightstand drawers. Even the little bars of soap, no exaggeration, reached delicately placed into every last soap dish in every bathroom. Only then, when the rooms were complete, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, they were all put aboard flatbed trucks, shipped up here, dropped off on the side of the river, where awaiting them was a crane operator. Now that crane operator began to hook up to the rooms one by one, lift them up, 75,000 pounds apiece, stack them on top of each other, where they were then snapped into place like Legos. That's how just about the entire building was constructed back in 1968. In fact, this whole structure here was completed in just 202 days, and that is a 500-room hotel. That's a world record. That is the story of the Hilton Palacio del Rio. And that, you guys, now takes us to my favorite little corner of the Riverwalk, situated upon the stone walls here on my left. Is a place called La Villita, or the little village. Now we can only see a fraction of it from down here on the boat, but all those buildings up there were constructed back in 1722 to house Spanish soldiers, which makes La Villita the very first residential district ever constructed in San Antonio. Now you go up there these days, it's a collection of about 24 different bars, cafes, boutiques, restaurants, but structurally it's largely just how it was about 300 years ago. What we've entered now, folks, is the Arneson Theater. This is the 1941 addition to La Villita. On my left is the seating capacity of about 800. Overlooks that beautiful stage on my right-hand side. People often ask me, do we use the Arneson Theater? The answer is a resounding yes. We use it all the time. All kinds of weekend shows going on here. A lot of those shows absolutely free of charge to the public. The Arneson Theater, fully equipped, lighting, sound, the whole works. In fact, if the Arneson Theater looks a little familiar to anybody, it might be because you watched a 1994 film called Miss Congeniality starring Sandra Bullock. One of the big scenes shot back there at the Arneson. Yeah, there's always one or two. Coming up on my right, large sculpture of the cowboy ringed steer right there. That sits outside of the Frisco Western Art Museum. Kind of an old Wild West themed museum. All kinds of old stagecoaches restored from past centuries inside there. Guns, saddles. There's a large interactive diorama of the Battle of the Alamo. That's the Frisco right down here on the water. Which brings us, everyone, to this little bridge right ahead of us. Have a look at the Presses Street Bridge because you might never see one like it again. This is called an ornamental iron bridge, a real rarity in the world. There are about 20 left in the U.S. Half of them live right here in San Antonio. As we go underneath, as long as you remain seated, you will not make any contact with anything hanging down from Old Presses Street Bridge, not unless you're about 7'6". And that brings us to my next landmark on my right-hand side, river level. The one and only island you're going to see on this whole tour. The first thing you see on this island here is a little iron structure that is called Father Massenet's Table. That was installed there in 1991, 300 years after the first Catholic Mass was given on the banks of the river. It happened right here. If you look at the island itself, it's made entirely out of the roots of the tree that grows out of it. That whole structure from bottom to top is just one massive tree growing out of the bed of the river. If you look carefully, you might notice that island is shaped like a heart. And that, you guys, is what we call Marriage Island. Some 200 couples get married on that island every single year. Now, legend has it, if you get married on Marriage Island, your marriage will not only be a happy one, but it will last you for the rest of your life. Take it from me, I was married right there. 3 times, yeah. Yeah, it works. On my right now, we got Divorce Island. Anyway, this is where the water kind of widens out. Nice, easy going stretch back here. This whole tree line on my right-hand side, those are all the same species of tree. They're the most common type of tree you'll find on the tour, and many of them are imported from Louisiana. Anybody know what kind of trees we're looking at? Cypress trees. Well done. Where are you from? Missouri, right? Yes. I think you guys might have a few of those up there. Maybe. Well done, Missouri. On my left-hand side, there it is, you guys, towering 400 feet into the air, capped off by the American flag. That is what we call the Tower Life building. Anybody ever see the original Ghostbusters movie? Yeah, that's not it. That's an octagonal building, built in 1929, purchased brand new for $3 million by two guys called the Smith & Youngs. They're the ones who had the gargoyles installed way up there at the top of the Tower Life building. When asked why they needed gargoyles to accompany their new purchase, they always gave the same reason. They said they were there to ward off any bad luck they might encounter in the world of business or real estate. But here's the thing, the Smith & Youngs made a large mistake in buying that building. And that mistake was the fact that they bought it in June of 1929. Happened months later, of course, was the stock market crash. We ended up in the Great Depression, and they had to sell that building off for 10 cents on the dollar, 300 grand. After that sale was finalized, the Smith & Youngs packed their bags. They left San Antonio not only flat broke, but also owing a whole cast of characters a whole bunch of money. In fact, we never saw those two again. So much for gargoyles. Up ahead of us, folks, that large red building straight ahead with that greenish rooftop. A lot of people ask if that's a church when they first see it. And I finally worked out why. It's because of that steeple-like structure coming out of the right-hand side of the rooftop. Now, I can assure you that it's not a church. I can also assure you, you don't want to confess any sins in that building. That is the Bexar County Courthouse. That's been in operation since 1897. I'm going to honk the horn, don't be alarmed. Just let traffic know we're coming out. Two things going on here. Number one, this little stone bridge we're passing underneath is a floodgate. In fact, underneath my 2 feet right now is where a massive steel door lies on the bottom of the river. That steel door can be raised up, locked into vertical position, and that protects downtown from floodwater due to excessive rainfall. Number two, we're making a right-hand turn now onto an artificial flood prevention system called the flood channel. If you look the other way, you'll see why I didn't make a left-hand turn. That's because 400 yards in that direction back there is a 15-foot drop-off from top of a dam. And the San Antonio River flows over that dam. In fact, this one right here is going to continue for about 230 more miles, all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, where it empties into the Bay of San Antonio. But it's not going to get there via the San Antonio River, because this is about to merge with the Guadalupe, and that's going to take it the rest of the way in. It takes a long time, but yeah, these waters do go all the way to the Gulf. As I mentioned, this is our artificial flood channel, and this, you guys, was put here for one reason. That reason is the Great Rainstorm of 1921. In September of that year, over a course of about 2 days, San Antonio was nailed with 17 inches of rain. That put downtown underneath so much water that Houston Street, the one that goes through the Alamo, that was underneath 9 feet of rainwater. That killed 50, and that's why we have this flood channel. It's been in operation since 1941. San Antonio's downtown ever since has never flooded again. Quick pause here, guys, because there's no traffic behind us. I always like to, if I can, show off one of our great off-river landmarks. There it is, those two twin stone towers sort of gently lit up in amber lighting tonight. You guys make those out about a block and a half off the river. My left. Those two towers belong to the San Fernando Cathedral. That cathedral, to this day, is the longest operating cathedral in the state of Texas. They have been serving Sunday Mass there since 1731. And if you go up there, go inside, use the left-hand entrance. Because when you do, the first thing you're going to encounter are the remains of none other than Davy Crockett himself in the tomb right there inside the entrance of the San Fernando Cathedral. Straight ahead, all lit up tonight, that massive tree. Anybody know what kind of tree that tree is?
Cedar tree. Is it cedar?
Actually, it's also a cypress. It doesn't look like it because it's so old. This is the biggest, the tallest, oldest cypress tree on the river. It's about 90 feet tall, probably pushing about 650 years old.
What happened?
Just turn it.
And then everyone takes us to the second floodgate. Yes, we do have two entrances to downtown via the river, so we need two floodgates to protect downtown. This is one of them right here. Now this floodgate drops right down like a guillotine, like a butcher's knife. And, oh, you know what, I gotta get through here right now, because They're going to test it in about 10 seconds. No, I'm just kidding. We're not supposed to tell that joke no more. And just like that, we're back onto the natural river. Coming up on my right, you guys follow the scaffolding with your eyes all the way to the end. At the end of it, there's a little two-story stone structure. Up on the second floor, those three hanging lights up there, that you guys is the Esquire Tavern. Now take that in, because this is not only the oldest bar anywhere on the entire river, this might be the oldest bar in Texas. No one knows how far back it goes because it predates all of our records. What we do know about it is that inside, nothing has been altered in over a century. Nothing has been redone, remodeled, replaced. It's a perfect time capsule going back to about 1920. In fact, inside you can find the longest wooden bar in the state at 108 feet long. That's the Esquire Tavern. Go check it out. Coming upon here, guys, one of our 3 boat docks. Yeah, we got 3 different ticketing locations, same tour, more or less. Now, this boat dock here is located outside of the Aztec Theater, coming up on my right. The Aztec is marked by that large semicircular bronze awning right there. Now, the Aztec goes back to 1926. That's when it first opened, and it operated for years as an old silent movie house, which means and many times over, it showed all the great films starring none other than Charlie Chaplin. Now, there's a great story about Charlie Chaplin at the Aztec Theater. True story, goes like this. Back about 1930, Charlie Chaplin caught a bus to San Antonio, got off the bus, walked into the Aztec, where they just so happened to be hosting a Charlie Chaplin look-alike competition. On a whim, Chaplin entered himself into the competition, where he proceeded to take 3rd place. True story about Charlie Chaplin at the Aztec Theater. This bridge right here. Anybody recognize this bridge from 1990s Hollywood film? Now, if you're not from here, you probably have no idea. But yeah, I heard it. There it is, Selena's Bridge. Yeah, this is called Selena's Bridge because this bridge here was featured in the 1997 hit film called Selena, starring Jennifer Lopez. Now, if you're not from San Antonio, you might still have no idea what I'm talking about, as you probably haven't seen the movie, but it's a very big deal here in San Antonio, old Selena's Bridge. In fact, a lot of the locals jump on these boats just to hear the boat captain point out that bridge. On my left-hand side is the next landmark. That is a hotel called La Mancio. Now, prior to being a hotel, that building was all the way back to 1853 as it was an all-boys boarding school called St. Mary's back then. Now, we still have St. Mary's here in San Antonio, but it's evolved into St. Mary's Law School. Now it's situated a few miles up the road. And this has been a hotel now called La Mansion since 1968, where the guests inside are staying in old 19th century boys' dorms and classrooms. Overhead now, we got Navarro Street Bridge. Once we got from underneath this bridge, everyone, if you look directly, and I mean immediately on my left and way up into the sky, you'll see a little architectural trick of the eye. It's going to look like a single freestanding wall ready to topple into the water. What it actually is a massive triangular building. It takes up half a city block. That's called the Nix Hospital, built in 1930. And that is, of all things, America's very first air-conditioned hospital. Yeah, we don't invent much of anything in San Antonio. We don't pioneer much of anything, but we did lead the way when it comes to air conditioning.
Hard rock.
That is not a hospital anymore, but it's been all gutted out and that's slated to become residential in the next couple of years. And by the way, if anyone knows Carol Burnett, she was born right there at the Nix. San Antonio native, Carol Burnett. Straight ahead of us, this upcoming bridge. If you look at the large building right behind that bridge, you'll notice all the dark rectangular windows way up there. That's the Hyatt Regency Hotel. Now that hotel is famous here for its height. Not because it's tall, but because it's uncharacteristically short. There's a very peculiar reason for it. The city of San Antonio, believe it or not, actually prohibits any building in the city from casting a shadow upon the Alamo in the setting sun. True story, that's why this Hyatt here is limited to 16 floors. That's because the Alamo lies on the other side of it. This Hyatt sits right between the Alamo and the setting sun every evening. Which means that from here, the best way to get to the Alamo by foot, right through those triple glass doors on my left. That's how you get there. All right, now speaking of the Alamo is not the number one. The Alamo is the number 2 most visited tourist destination in Texas. Anybody think they might know what number 1 is? Might have heard it somewhere. It's the San Antonio Riverwalk, number 1. Number 2 is the Alamo. The number 3 most visited tourist destination in Texas. You would never guess if I gave you 1,000 chances. But it's also here in San Antonio. And you're riding on it right now. These boats, number 3 most visited tourist spot in the entire state. We sell about as many tickets as the Houston Astros year after year after year. By the way, the number 1 most visited tourist destination in all of North America, a little place called Central Park, New York, number 1, followed by Niagara Falls. Overhead now, this plain old bridge, you guys, marks the beginning of about 100 yards we like to call Restaurant Road. It starts now, it's on both sides of us, and this is the epicenter of all the Tex-Mex cuisine you can find right here in the heart of the city. All along here, both sides of us, nothing but Tex-Mex restaurants, every single one of them. Riverside dining and balcony dining, indoor and outdoor seating, homemade guacamole, you name it. It's Tex-Mex, it's on the menus right here along Restaurant Road. In fact, by the time I drop you guys off at the end of this tour, we will have passed by so many places to eat of all kinds that if you were to visit a new one every week, it would take you over a year to get to all of them. That's how many we got in this little 2-mile stretch. Got about 55 down here. Coming up now on my right-hand side, underneath these hanging amber lights, this, you guys, is the kingpin of all the restaurants on the Riverwalk. This is Casa Rio, or River House. This is the very first restaurant to ever open its doors on the Riverwalk. They have been open and at it 7 days a week since the year 1946. And by the way, if anyone's looking for some good riverside dining, this is always a good choice, as they have more riverside dining area than any other establishment down here.
This is really cool, Dad. Glad we come on this. I see a boat and a yellow.
We're going to take a quick pause here, guys. Check for traffic.
Boat. Are we just stopping in the middle of the lake?
He's just pausing.
By the way, if anyone's a little lost right now on the tour, look ahead of us. That hotel right there, that is a record-breaking hotel we covered a little while ago. We've come full circle. And we're about to jump back onto that artificial extension we came out of to begin the tour. Now, a few more things about this extension. The water on it is a little bit deeper than the natural stretch. Back on the natural part, right behind us, it runs about 4 feet deep. In here, the water is about 6 feet deep. It's got a hard concrete bottom, runs the entire length. So this tour is basically a mix of artificial and natural pieces of river, kind of all put together. Now we do have wildlife in this river as well. We've got a few species of fish. We've got catfish, we've got bass, we've got red-fin sunfish, we've got turtles. And if you have been looking at the water, you may have noticed that, yes, we have water snakes in this river. We have 2 kinds. The first kind, a much more common kind, non-venomous, species of the diamond ash, non-venomous species of it. They run about 2 to 4 feet in length. Got a brown back, white belly, they're harmless. The other kind, though, is a little more rare, but they are the reason why you do not go into the river. That's because it is also home to the cottonmouth, also known as the water moccasin. We call them 2-steppers in San Antonio. That's because if they bite you, that's about how far you're going to be getting away. Do not go into the river. We have, on average, 1 person to fall in every 24 hours. All of them never to be seen again. They're all okay. Straight ahead of us, guys. Two large hotel buildings. Look at the one on the left way up there. That's the Marriott. That's the largest hotel by volume in our city. Now, that is also the location of a 1985 Guinness Book of World Records accomplishment that happened right there. Here's what happened. What used to stand there and had been there since 1906 was the old Fairmount Hotel. Not as big as the Marriott, but a large hotel for its time, the Fairmount. The Marriott, though, bought them out, and by 1985 wanted to knock the Fairmount down and build the Goliath you see there today. But the city intervened, and they said you may not even put a scratch on the old Fairmount due to its historicity. So they came to an agreement, and here's what they did. They hired a team of engineers. They got up underneath that old Fairmount, they dug it out, and they dragged it onto the street in one whole piece. From there, they put it aboard 18 dollies, and aboard pneumatic tires, rolled it 6 blocks south of here to my right to its final resting place, where it still, to this day, operates as a full-service hotel. You can stay there tonight at the Fairmount. Rooftop oysters and all. It's wonderful. Now that old Fairmount, you guys, as it rolled down the streets of San Antonio, it traveled at an average pace of 0.4 miles per hour. It took 5 days to go 6 blocks. Being 1985, kind of a different world back then. The whole city came out and they lined the sidewalks in droves by the thousands. And they brought with them their beach blankets and picnic baskets and lawn chairs. And they watched this old rickety hotel crawl down the road at 0.4 of a mile per hour for 5 long days. And that is the largest scale move in the world of its kind. One more left-hand turn, folks, but before I do, I can't finish off one of these tours without pointing out the second most iconic structure in San Antonio. There it is. I'll point at it so you don't miss it. That is a 750-foot tall observation deck, bar restaurant. Yes, it does rotate once every 45 minutes. That is a 1968 Tower of the Americas, the centerpiece of the 1968 World's Fair. I'm going to tell you one cool thing about the tower, which is this. There are 2 ways to get to the top. Way number 1, go by elevator. It takes about 4 minutes. Or number 2, you can actually climb by foot all 952 stairs that spiral up the interior of that old structure.
Hey, Libby.
We used to have races, in fact.
Have you had fun?
The all-time world record, 5 minutes and 18 seconds to get to the bottom of the top. Beat that. And here we are, everyone. We are back to where we pushed off about a half an hour ago, which means I got to drop you guys off here as well. I want to thank you guys all for coming out with us. Do me a favor, just stay seated till I jump out of the boat. Get us safely and securely tied down.